Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Running Between the Wickets with me, Melinda Farrell, as I travel the world covering, commentating, writing, talking about watching cricket in all sorts of weird and wonderful places. And the topic of today is really a wonderful place. That is Worcestershire. It is a club that I've been at a lot in the past year because I've been doing quite a bit of commentary for the BBC on the county championship. I really love doing it. Wonderful colleagues all around the place. We have a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and it's just a terrific way to spend 4 days watching red ball cricket on the domestic scene. I love first class cricket, and so it's been really good for me to sort of spend a lot of time doing that. One of the places that I love going to the most is New Road, the home of Worcestershire. Partly because the ground itself, New Road, is one of the most beautiful anywhere really, where the view from the press box and the commentary box where I spend most of the time is sensational. You've got that incredible cathedral, the trees. It's just a picture perfect ground from that perspective. It's right near the river, of course, so you've got the swans going by as well. And it's also just a really warm and friendly place, from the players to the staff to the people in the press box. It's genuinely the press box where you have the most amount of laughter. I'm absolutely sure it really is a great place to be. But it's a club that also has had a huge amount of difficulty and challenges to deal with over the past year. They were promoted to the First Division at the end of last year. I was lucky enough to be there for that too at Headingley. But immediately after they were promoted, they lost four players, key players to their bowling attack, pretty much depleted because players left for other counties. So that was going to be a huge one. It included the England international Josh Tongue, amongst others. So there was always going to be a bit of a rebuild at the time that they were up in the First Division. Also, I mentioned the river, being on the river. Well, Worcestershire obviously has issues with floods, and New Road has been no exception. That's been the case for decades. It's not new that the ground floods, but perhaps a sign of climate change. It seems to be getting a lot worse. And over the winter, last winter, when they weren't playing, it was flooded 8 times. You just have to feel for the ground staff who get the ground just about right to go, and then the flood water comes in again and they have to start from scratch. It meant that they weren't able to play the first month of the county championship at their home ground. They had to go and play their home fixtures at Kidderminster, which is also lovely, by the way, but it's not the same as having the facilities of the ground at New Road. So already there were going to be some really huge challenges for Worcestershire. It's a club that doesn't have a lot of money, especially compared to the bigger clubs that tend to do really well in the First Division. But all of that pales into insignificance compared to the tragedy that they had to deal with early in the season when Josh Baker, at the age of just 20, passed away from a complicated heart condition. It was very sudden, there was no warning, and it was just a horrific time for all of his family, friends, and of course teammates and the club as a whole, to just have a promising young player and a bright and really polite, fun young man be taken away from them so suddenly. So all in all, the challenges just have mounted up, and you may have been forgiven to think that they would be insurmountable. Incredibly, they ended up finishing sixth in the First Division, ahead of some clubs who have way more resources than them. They really do. And I was lucky enough to be there for that one as well, to see them promoted. To see them stay up in the first division and finish sixth, I should say. Did see them promoted last year as well. They recruited really well. They had some great overseas signings in Nathan Smith from New Zealand, in Jason Holder from New Zealand. They recruited from the South Asian Cricket Academy, which, don't forget, there's a podcast on that as well. If you go back and look through the podcasts, there's one with Tom Brown from SACA. One of their graduates, Kashif Ali, has become a really important part of the Worcestershire batting lineup. So that has been a real success story there for them. They've had to make do with the resources they've had. So I thought, seeing as I was there for the last week, that I might just find out where things are at the club after an incredibly emotional year that has brought them some success and also has brought a lot of sadness as well. One of the players who will not be taking to the field next year for Worcestershire is Joe Leach. He has really been the heart and soul of the club. He's celebrating his testimonial year and played his last game against Lancashire as Worcestershire sealed sixth position. So I decided I would have a chat with Joe about the year. He knows the club inside and out, alongside Alan Richardson, the head coach. And then after that pair, you'll hear from Ashley Giles, the chief executive of the club, just explaining the state that the club is in right now and what the future might hold from them and where their ambitions lie. Beautiful. Well, Alan Richardson and Joe Leach, thanks so much for dropping in to have a chat, seeing as we have a bit of a break in play because of, believe it or not, a wet ground. When you look at the season though, it's just one of the things that you guys have had to contend with, Joe. Like how, when you look back, do you sum up this season? Because it's obviously a big one for you and your last one. This is your last match. Has this season been particularly special or different in just, I guess, the at times courage and at times resilience that you've shown in the face of adversity?
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask management, obviously, about how we've dealt with it. But I think really a really special season. Looking back, I know we're not quite finished yet, but special in kind of so many ways, not necessarily good all the time. We've had some horrible things thrown at us that are well documented. Obviously the passing of Josh and the effect that's had on the group, continues to have on the group and the club. But as ever with this place, it's just every adversity seems to just bring everyone tighter together, and we somehow seem to keep managing to spin these things into positives, and obviously it feels like we've managed to do that this year, which is obviously probably one of the proudest achievements that I've had in my time here. You can look at trophies and matches won, but if you think about what we've managed to do as a club on the back of all the things that we've had thrown our way, then yeah, it's really special.
How did you go about coping with all that stuff, especially I guess coping with grief as well, that no one wants to have to do?
I don't know really, to be honest. It was looking back now into May, it was brutal really, and the only way, it's the same as any tragic loss, isn't it? The only way that you can cope with it is to come together, and we did. I think we pulled everyone in as tight as we could, Josh's family, the playing group, coaching staff, the club, everyone just pulled together, and that's all you can do.
What feelings do you have and thoughts do you have when you look at this group, Richo, and what they've been able to do this year, both on and off the field?
I'm immensely proud to be part of it, that's for sure. I mean, I've been around now for a number of years, either as a player or as a coach, and to watch how they work, it feels, I don't want to sound too sickly, but it's a real honour and a privilege to watch it. We've obviously had real times of adversity and watch how they go about it, and Joe's talked about it then, how closely they work together, and it's an ever-changing group, but there's a core of players there that make sure it stays together, and there's a very definite way of going about how you are, not only on the pitch but in the changing room as well. And so just to watch it is amazing. And it's, yes, I sit there on the balcony and watch them play cricket, which is a lot of fun for the majority of it, especially when we're doing well. But to watch them off the park is amazing as well. You know, as a coach now, you sort of take a step back and listen to the conversations in the changing room, on the balcony, in the hotel at an away game. And yeah, it's amazing to be part of, and like I say, it feels like a real honour to be part of that as well, and feel that you've helped along the way. And I think every player and support staff should be incredibly proud of that, because we've all helped each other at times, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, when you talk about the core group of players, I'm going to embarrass him now because you're
Let's
going to
do
lose.
it. Yeah,
let's do it. Let's embarrass Joe.
Don't.
But you are losing one of your core players who's been around for a long time. How big of a loss is he going to be?
Yeah, he'll be huge. He'll be huge. But I've talked about this a little bit, and obviously his contribution on the park will be one that we have to try and then fill, and what he's done over the number of years, but also his influence off the park, which is going to be massive. But I like I said, I do talk about this. The legacy remains. So, you know, there's a few players that have that privilege to leave that, and Joe's one of them. So the playing group will be able to use what he's given them over the number of years to take them forward. I have no doubt about that. I think, you know, replacing him on the park is going to be really hard. No one, you know, to take 50 wickets a season regularly is incredibly difficult. Replacing him in the change room will be different, but his legacy remains within that. The stories that people will tell about Joe, which will be good, generally quite funny and humorous, and there'll be a lot of laughs to be had. But that's huge. And I think we've all been in changing rooms where big players leave, and it goes one of two ways, and the stories are very warming and certainly very positive, and others might not be so. And the one with Joe, it'll be incredibly warm. And so any new player that comes into that, or any player who's only been around for a little while, they'll be reminded of that a lot. It's just what happened. I remember I was here as a player when Vikram Solanki left, and he leaves and he departs the building, but the legacy remains. And Joe, yeah, I'm going to embarrass him. It will remain. It will. And there's a group of core players in there that when their time comes, it will be the same as well. And that's really important. And it's how the club becomes special, because as we're in a box now with Van Benholder and there's many, many other great players, their legacy remains. And what makes the club stronger even when they've left.
Is that nice to hear? We also heard some lovely words being said to you, and really warm sort of welcome and appreciation by the members and the other players who are here. Because often you don't get to hear what people really think about you in the sort of normal day-to-day part of life, and it's often only when you're leaving that you suddenly hear all of this. Did you realise just how fond everybody here is of you?
Well, everyone has to be nice at the moment, don't they? That's the privilege.
Correct. It's easy to be really fond of him when you know he's not coming back.
They're just making sure they send me on my way. I think that's ultimately what they're trying to do.
No.
Yeah, look, it's been, you're right, it's very weird. It's to hear people speak about you like you're not in the room. But yeah, it's obviously very nice, very flattering. I think, you know, the nicest part about what people have said and what I've listened to is that stuff off the field. That's the nicest part, because I don't think it's going to be that hard to replace the cricket Joe, but and I don't think it's going to be particularly hard to replace me in the dressing room as well, despite what they might think. There's so many awesome people in that dressing room at the moment, and it's such a good place to be. And I think Richo, you know, used the word privilege to be in there. It really is a privilege, and that's the one thing I'm definitely going to miss the most.
I remember last year, the last match when it was confirmed you were being promoted up at Headingley, and we were actually all just sharing a beer one of the nights up there, and it had just been confirmed. Some of the players were there who were about to leave the club as well, and you've lost some really good players just as you got promoted. And I remember about the time that you were sort of talking about, if you finished top 6, that was going to be a really good result first year up. And it's actually happened. Did you genuinely believe that you were going to be able to do that all the way through, especially I guess early in the season when there were probably extra challenges?
You never know, and that's what makes it quite exciting. You go into the unknown, but it was always going to be an exciting challenge for us. You watch the group grow, and it goes through many different kinds of leadership. So Joe, really drove the club on after Daryl, and then Brett takes over, and then it becomes slightly different dynamic, and you watch it go in its own way. And we knew it was going to be a challenge in Division 1. We knew it was going to be a challenge with a different squad. I think we lost 8 players out of 18, 19 domestic players. But that's what kind of makes it exciting, I think. Like I said, that core group of older players had remained with us, but we were losing some very talented cricketers and some that definitely would have helped us this season. But then it becomes, well, how do we go about it now? And we recruit some players who we like and who we think can build us again. And it felt like it was going to be incredibly difficult. At low moments when I wasn't quite so confident, it was like, oh my God, we're going through transition and we're doing it in a harder competition. But actually the positive was always turning around. We're like, actually, no, this is really exciting. These guys are going to be so up for it. They're going to be so motivated to do really well. We're going to be playing against some amazing sides and some amazing grounds and have the opportunity to show what they can do and what we're like as a team. So yeah, it was always going to be a challenge, but one, that's what we play for. We can't complain about being in Division 1 if that's what we were aiming to do.
How have you found it being back up in Division 1 again, having sort of been there and there before with this group? Like, how's the way that they've managed to deal with the competition in Division 1 been compared to the past?
I think we had some really good, honest conversations over the course of the winter. I think, look, I certainly won't, you know this, we've been scarred by a couple of times we've been up previously. It's just not gone as we would have wanted it to either time, despite competing. And I think, it was helpful that we'd recruited some guys from Division 1, I think, kind of dispelled a little bit of the myth. You got to hear, the other side of what it's like to play against Worcester from some of those guys who came in. And I think what we've done really well is we've just stuck to our strengths, and which is being together. It is seeing the funny side of most situations, and we've really embraced who we are and what we are and tried not to be any different to that. I think also, and I don't know what you think about this, but I think our 2 overseas players at the start of the season were a massive help to us, not only for what they gave us on the pitch, but I think Nathan is a superstar in the making, fitted into the dressing room really well, and then can't speak highly enough about him as a cricketer or a person, but then I think when Jason came in, just everyone who knows Jace, he's a superstar of the sport, but as a character, I think he embraced his time here, loved his time here, and I think that just gave everyone a bit of confidence that someone like Jason and the name came in and truly believed in the group, and I think that was really special. And speaking about legacy, Jason and Nathan's impact on the group has definitely lasted throughout the season and will continue to last as well. Because
you're pretty good recruiters, aren't you? Because you mentioned the overseas players, and they have been fantastic. But then you've, even through Saka, you end up with Kashif Ali, and gosh, the way I was lucky enough to be there for the twin centuries. I was there for the 90. I was like, whoa, who's this guy and why haven't I seen him before? But others who have come through, even getting Tom Taylor in from Northants and seeing him do really well in some games as well. So is there like an ethos that you try to have when new players come in, that they seem to blossom sort of when they get here?
I think recruitment, we've had our moments, certainly, and previous history says that we've done really well. I think that's a couple of things, really. We as much due diligence as we can about who we're getting and why we're getting them. So I have some real direction in that. And then in terms of, I think, the environment that we create, and certainly the players, the informal inductions that they have, I think helps them really embed in the group and makes them feel, valued, and makes them feel at ease, and with very little pressure on, so they can actually go out and perform. And I think we can recruit whoever we like at times and have some amazing players with some stats, but if you don't give them the platform to do it on, that can be really difficult. So I think there's a bit of twofold. We take the character of the player into it hugely. I think that's really important for us. But then also giving them the platform we believe that they need to try and perform. And I can only echo Joe's words on Nathan and Jason. The confidence that they gave us, the calmness that he gave us, really. We had some sticky moments at the start of the year. Mm-hmm. And just to watch someone like Jason, who was just like, everything will be all right, boys. It was literally like that. And we've got a guy who's captained internationally and played a hell of a lot of cricket, been in the IPL. It was so cool about it all. And I think that just breeds it. And you believed him when he said it. So it was amazing to have him around. And, you know, as a coach, I'm always trying to learn off whoever. And Jason was someone that you were like, right, okay, this is another level of just being so at ease with everything that's going on around. And it certainly helped us throughout the season.
Joe, you've been having your testimonial year, which we've been giving it plugs on the radio because I know you've got that huge dinner coming up at Lord's, which sounds amazing. But what's going to be next for you? Are you going to stay involved in cricket? You've got your business. What are you going to do?
Honestly, just a bit of time, just to figure out exactly where life is going to point me. That's in the short term. That's what I'm looking to do. Just take a bit of time, decompress. Obviously, kind of firmly close this door, which is obviously going to be really sad. But I think need to put a bit of distance between this and whatever's next. So just a bit of time to figure out what that is.
Well, I reckon you'll always have a very warm welcome back here. I know that for absolute sure. And we were here last year, not here, but in Leeds, talking about realistic expectations for this year. Do you have realistic expectations for next year?
Oh, wow. No idea, to be honest. Me and Dole spoke about it at length yesterday for a while before we got on, and it's a real exciting challenge ahead to see what we come up with next. I think it's something that really has to engage the group. I don't necessarily believe it has to be a linear line, that it's like, well, you finish here this year and you must improve in terms of league position. Of course we want to do that. Of course we want to compete in everything that we play in, and we want to finish as high as we can, but it's how we really engage the players and all the staff in the club into what that next step looks like and what it can be. It was very obvious in my first year. We were in Division 2. Well, what do we want to do? And everyone, it was so easy. We sat there and we want to be champions. We want to get promoted, right? Well, this year, right, what do we want to do? Well, what does that look like? It was slightly a longer conversation. You know, next year will be something similar again, but I think it's setting a goal that everyone is really comfortable with, but they know it's going to be a real stretch at times, and we know we're going to have to dig deep and be really motivated towards that. So that's a real skill in itself, but I think we've done enough work now for the boys to know what they're trying to achieve and how they're going to try and go about it. So the exciting bit will be what that looks like next.
I know that all the fans will be eager to see what it does. That does happen next year. I know I'm going to be, because I always love being here. And Joe, I just wish you all the best for your future as well, because you've been a great servant to the game on the field and off the field.
Thank you very much.
We love him, don't we?
Right. Am I on?
You're on. Yeah. It's okay. I'll ask you questions. You don't have to do it all by yourself. Ashley, how do you sum up this season and everything that you've been able to achieve in what in so many ways has been a season full of adversity?
Yeah, a season full of adversity, a season full of challenge, a season full of tragedy as well, which, real highs and lows. I think you've been forgiven for calling it annus horribilis, really. But somehow we're coming through the other side. We've not stopped that journey yet, but a really resilient group of people, the Worcestershire family. So yeah, it's the toughest of years, but often adversity is when you find out the most about people, and I think we've done a lot of that this year.
Yeah, what did you find out about your players?
About the players, the coaching staff, our staff, that they are resilient, they're strong, they're together, they are prepared to get knocked down and dust themselves down and go again. And that, I think something's been said about me during my career, and I like that in people, because we all face adversity. It's just how you pick yourself up from that and go again. But also, we've got some really good players, and often when you talk about fighting and resilience, you forget to mention that at times this year people have played some really important innings, bowled some really important spells that have changed games. So I don't think we should underplay that either.
You had your members forum a couple of days ago here at New Road. Where I know you were asked about sort of where you look to next year, but where is the club, I guess, situated ahead of next year? Because you've kind of achieved your goals in the past couple of years, and now it looks like you'll be finishing 6th in the First Division. I believe that's the best result in like 20 years.
Yeah.
Where do you set your stall out for next year?
Well, we're not done here yet, but hopefully we finish 6th. Look, actually, I suppose one of the important stats is that this is only the second time we've retained First Division status, but we've never done it 2 years in a row. So next year that becomes the challenge. You know, realistically, our resources aren't going to change a lot. You know, budgets are still going to be tight. We're not going to be able to suddenly bring in 3 or 4 players that we say, well, now we're going to challenge for a top 3 spot in Division 1. That's just not realistic for a club our size. So we need to continue to cut our cloth accordingly, but also where we do add, and we've already added, Ben Allison's come in from Essex, who's been with us before, another really good character and someone who's fitted well into the dressing room. Where we do add, we need to make sure we bring the right people in and give them all the support they possibly need. And I think there's something Richo, our head coach, has got right. He's got a good team around him, but he creates an environment there where people feel challenged but comfortable and able to express themselves and play their game. So I think that's also important. And look, yeah, staying up in Division 1 would be great, but there's other formats as well. T20 this year, we were a bit disappointing. A number of games went down to the last over or last balls. And to be fair, a few of them we should have been on the other side of, and we weren't. So we've got to improve that, because for us here at New Road, T20 cricket's really important, both for our fans to watch, but also from a commercial point of view. So an improved T20 Blast next year would be great.
Obviously, there'll be people wondering about where the club is at the moment heading into another winter, because there's nothing you can do to stop the likelihood of the ground flooding again. And we've had a day called off here during this final match of the season because it had rained overnight and it was pretty sodden. What is the status when it comes to the location where we are, if the club may have to keep investigating alternative locations?
Yeah, well, look, firstly, no one wants to leave New Road. Everyone loves it here. And the view is second to none. You know, on a beautiful day, it's a great venue. Unfortunately, for much of the winter, we're underwater, or we have been, certainly last year. Now, that situation doesn't look like it's going to improve. Doesn't mean this winter's going to be as bad as last, but over time, that situation is worsening through climate change, and we probably are the only professional sports team, certainly in the country, who face an existential threat from climate change. So that threat we have to take very seriously. We have to lean into and not bury our heads in the sand. Now, what are we doing? Well, the board's made a statement about its actions, which will be, what can we do to stay here, basically, on one hand, and on the other hand, if we were forced to move at some point, what might an alternative venue look like? You know, where, what, how, when, all of those things. And from a governance point of view, it would be wrong of us not to look at those things, because we're talking about the sustainability of the club. So right now we're in the information gathering stage, I suppose. We're getting all that stuff in from a number of different agencies. but ultimately we're a members club. So when we're ready with that information, we'll take it to the members, and they may have a decision to make. They may not. We may come in and say it's fine, but the likelihood is at some point the members are going to have to make a decision.
When are you expecting to be able to present that information to members?
That will be into the new year. You know, I'm thinking probably end of Jan, early Feb. By the time we've got all that together, because obviously everyone's keen to know what's going on, and we're pressured for this information all the time. But it does take time to gather, particularly when you've got a season on at the same time. So the members will get that information. They'll get everything. I've said in members forums, there's nothing to hide here. And then we'll go from there, but one step at a time.
Worcestershire was one of only 2 counties that didn't apply for a Tier 1 women's team. Why was it that you didn't apply, and where does women's cricket fit into the plans here?
Well, firstly, women's cricket does fit into the plans here, so we've been awarded a Tier 2 team for next year. Tier 1's just beyond us, really, from a resource point of view, both physical, financial, space, the ground, the issues we have with the ground as it is. To have another full-time professional team here would be very difficult. And so I think we were just realistic about where we are. The temptation could have been to apply for a Tier 1 just for the look, and we didn't want to take that approach. But we've always been keen to have a Tier 2 team here, and when we do, we want to do it really well. So we're excited about that and the development of the women's game, which has come so far so quickly, and we're certainly looking forward to the women's Rapids having a successful year next year.
I mean, there's so much of it comes back to resources, and with all of these issues from recruitment to the women's team to what happens, so much comes down back to that each time. And I guess just looking a bit wider at what's happening in the English game and sale of the 100, where does a club like this or a county like this, or how does it look at what happens next year and how it might possibly affect or not affect? Because it sort of sounds, it's difficult for a club when you're saying, well, top 3, are we ever going to be able to challenge for that? And it seems a shame that you have a talented county that goes, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that while we have the resources we have.
Yeah, so it's quite a big one to break down that question. But if you start with, people often talk about the widening gap between the bigger clubs and the smaller clubs. Well, that gap is almost gone. You're not gonna squeeze that gap unless any of the clubs individually take private investment. Then you may see that, but that gap's already opened up. So when you talk about resource for challenging for Division 1, just a simple comparison of Surrey, who are a fantastic and successful club on and off the field. Their turnover is, I think last year was around 65 million. Ours is 6. So their resource available from that is much, much greater than ours to invest back into cricket. That doesn't mean we don't invest what we can, but as CEO, I've got to balance, again, when you talk about sustainability, sustainability is on and off the field, because without off the field, the on the field just doesn't work at all. Now, in terms of the 100, we welcome investment into the game. I think the competition could do with it, because there is a current battle for the top tier of franchise competitions around the world, and we'd like the 100 to be there. But also, we're all owners of the 100. All the counties own the 100. So any investment into that will be a payday of sorts for the counties. And I think the game needs that investment. We certainly do. From, a infrastructure point of view and a cricket point of view. And this isn't just about the 100. Any monies that come from that sale should, I keep using that word sustainability, but should help to sustain the whole game from top to bottom, not just the 100 or white ball, but the whole game.
And I guess the difficult thing is you're only going to be able to do it once.
Yeah, you're only going to sell parts of the franchises once. Obviously, the host will retain value in those sides, and ultimately the ECB will retain control of the overall competition. So what we do with those funds is really important. Those next steps are really important for me, and that's again the danger, as we've seen with some other sports, perhaps rugby, is you get sucked into almost player wage hyperinflation, and that money can disappear pretty quickly. And again, you've got to cut your cloth accordingly, because we haven't yet, and we don't know how much that may be, but we could get a nice windfall of cash, and then we could, I could say, well, let's compete with Surrey next year. Well, that's again, it's certainly not sensible, and it's not sustainable. And as the CEO, it would just be poor business. So how we spend that money, what we do with it, is also important, because again, it should play a part in sustaining us as a business into the future.
But overall, what you managed to do with what you've got is pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I'm extremely proud of the club. I'm extremely proud of the dressing room and the coaching staff and the cricket department for what they've achieved this year in such difficult and awful circumstances in some ways. But the whole club for what we've been through since, when was the first flood last year? About the 20th of October. So we've been pretty much on high alerts, whether that be from off the field, a flooding, a cricket point of view, since that time. So we've got a very tired staff, we've got a very tired club, and there's still much to do. But I'm hoping through October, most of the staff can take a bit of a break here and there before we get into Christmas, and then before you know it, we're back into it again. So it never ends, but it is an incredible place to be. Super resilient, some really good people, and we're proud. We often hear we're everyone's favourite second team, and it's a really nice thing. And even when we retained Division 1 status this year, the messages I got from people around the country, that support is really great to feel for a club like Worcestershire.
Well, I look forward to seeing what you do next year then.
Thank
you.
And
wish you a very, very dry winter.
Thanks, Mel.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Ashley Giles, as well as Joe Leach and Alan Richardson as well from Worcestershire. Now, because it's a bit of a longer podcast as far as interviews go, because I had 3 of them this week, I'm not going to do a question and answer segment. I'm going to save that for another podcast, which is on its way as well. That's with Jacob Bethel, who's just had a real breakout season, you must say, being selected in the England white ball squads. I caught up with him recently. So that's going to come in a podcast soon, and I'll go more into my usual format, let you know where I'm at, what I'm doing, and also take some of your questions as well. So look out for that. It's coming very, very soon. And then until next time, just make sure wherever you are in the world, you're enjoying your cricket.